Hey, Nathan here from PH Studios, and welcome back to another tower defense game tutorial. And in this tutorial, we're going to discuss the last screen, which is the play screen. So even though this is the last screen we will be programming, we will have a few more tutorials after this one. The next tutorial, I'm going to discuss the creation of the XML files. Now I'm going to discuss things in a generic sense, so you can create your own XML files. I don't want to create 20 XML files on camera well, obviously some of you will find that boring, so I will discuss the XML files and what to look out for, and then that will pretty much be it for that tutorial. Then the tutorial after that will be the finalizing tutorial. I'll make sure you have all of your assets you need, so all of your textures, all of your music, all of your video files, all of your sprite fonts, all of your XML files. I'll give you all those files at that tutorial. That way you can see if you have every single file you need, and then we'll actually build the game, do any last minute bug fixes that we might have programmed. Since all this, we couldn't go any farther with this from the level selection screen and the play screen because we can't test those without the actual files. And I wanted to wait until the very end to give you all those files, so that way you know, how do I create these XML files? How do I create these files to interact with my game engine? And how do I use them in the memory? So how do I create those XML files? So I wanted to give those to you after the XML video, which will be next. So only 2 tutorials left. The last one might be a long one, depending on if we have any bugs we need to fix. So let's get this one finished, and the play screen is actually pretty short. And you'll see why here in a few minutes. We will need to have some using statements, so let's add using Microsoft.xna.framework, using Microsoft.xna.framework.graphics, using Microsoft.xna.framework.content, using Tower Defense Engine. Okay, so the play screen is basically going to be an extension of the Tower Defense engine. The engine's going to take care of most of the stuff for us. So we need a few fields, so let's reference the user interface. I'm going to call that UI. We need to have a map, session, list of tower called towers, sprite font, level selection screen, and I'm going to call this level select. Okay, so those are our fields. Now we need the level selection screen because we do not actually want to load in the maps a second time. You know, we select a map, we play that map, we're done playing that map, we go back to the level selection screen. We do not want to have to reload those maps from the hard drive a second time. So we keep that screen in memory, and then we just reference it, and it will be fine when we're done with this screen. Okay, of course this is a play screen, so we will accept input. Return true. Okay, so after that Boolean property, let's create the constructor. Okay, so what is our chain of screens? So we start the game, it displays our video introduction. Then it displays the level selection screen. then it will display this screen. So this screen needs to reference the level selection screen, and I'm going to call this LSS. Now, the level selection screen is obviously where you're going to select the map you want to play. So you need to pass in the map you want to play. And I'm just going to call that M. So now, inside this constructor, we set the map field equal to M, the map we pass into this constructor. I'm going to set the level select field equal to LSS. I'm going to make a new towers list. So towers is equal to new list of type tower, opening, closing parentheses. And actually, in those parentheses, let's just put 10. Some nice number to start out with. 10 towers. That list can grow if it needs to, but give it a nice capacity for the beginning. So let's just say 10. Session. We need to start up a new session. So new session, pass it in the map that it needs to use. So M, closing parentheses and semicolon. Session plus equals. Session is an event-driven session. So session dot health decreased plus equals tab. So whenever your health is decreased, it will throw that event and it will execute the code inside this method. But before we get to that method, we need one more thing in this constructor. So add another line and session dot map finished. That's another event plus equals tab. Okay, so let's discuss the map finished method first. So delete the throw new not implemented exception. So now if the map is finished, again, we've finished the map. If we successfully finished the map, we won. We defeated all the waves. Let's just, for now, this is very basics in tower defense tutorial. So for now, let's just take you back to the level selection screen. Now, if you fail, if you died, display a game over screen, and then you can enhance what's on the game over screen. Maybe you want to keep a record of the stats. This is how many enemies you killed, 300. This is how much money you gained, 912. This is how long you've lasted, 9 minutes, 10 seconds. If you want to keep track of those stats, you can display those in the game over screen. So those are the two things we need to do. If you've won, if you defeated all the waves and you still have health left, you have won that map. For now, let's just take you to the level selection screen. If you have died, we'll take you to the game over screen. So let's just go ahead and code that right now. If. Now, how do we consider we have won if you still have health left over? If session.health is greater than or equal to 0. If you have 0 lives left, you're still alive. So we consider that a win. We're going to exit this screen. We're going to reactivate the level select screen. Else, exit screen, and you can actually exit screen up top if you want to. That way you only have to call that once. So we're going to exit the screen and set the screen system dot add screen new game over screen level select. So we're going to call the new game over screen and pass it the level select object. Okay, so now whenever an enemy goes to your house, you lose a life. We call that health. So now when health is decreased, we perform logic. The only logic right now for this very basic introduction to tower defense is that if your lives become less than 0, we're going to display the game over screen. If session.health is less than 0, we're going to exit screen and set the screen system.add screen, new game over screen, and we're going to pass in the level select object. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's code the initialize screen method first. So delete the throw new not implemented exception. And I'm going to add a comment here for if you want to use dynamic resolutions, change for dynamic resolutions. Now I'm going to hard code it to 1280 by 720. So it's high definition 1280 720 resolution. I'm going to hard code it for that resolution. If you want to do dynamic resolution, you'll just change these fields to be dynamic. So we're going to create a new user interface, and that has 3 regions and 1 session. So 4 things we need to pass into the constructor. So the first up is new map region. Map region accepts the session, a new rectangle. The rectangle is where we want it to be displayed. And that's misspelled. And I'm going to give us more room here. Okay, so where do we want the map to appear? We want it to be the biggest region in our game. So what I decided is it's going to start at 0, 0, top left, and it's going to be 960 pixels wide and 690 pixels tall. Now we need to pass it the graphics device, and we get that from the screen system.graphics device. Okay, so how did I get these values? I went into Photoshop and I designed the map, and I wrote down the map region was 960 by 690. So I just wrote that down and decided where I wanted it to be put, and that's at 0, 0. So if you want to make the map region smaller or bigger, you just increase or decrease its values to fit your need. Or if you want to change its location to the top right, you just change this value as well. Okay, so the next up is the wave information. Alright, so give it a session, a new rectangle. Now the wave information is going to be at 0 for the X, but the Y, it's going to be directly below the map region. So we're going to set up 690 for the Y. Remember, that is since the map region starts at Y0, but it has a height of 690, if we want the wave information to be exactly below that, it's going to be at 690. It's going to be the full width of the screen, so 1280, and it's going to be the rest of the height, so 30. That gives us our 720 height. We need to give it a graphics device, and we need to give it a color we want. So I'll just give it black. Next up is the command info bar. The where we can select the towers on the right side, where we can pause, play, increase the speed, decrease the speed, purchase a tower, delete a tower, upgrade a tower. All that stuff is in the command info bar, and it's going to be directly right after the map region. It's going to be to the right of the map region. So new command info bar. It's going to have another session reference, a new rectangle, 960 for the X because it's right after the map region horizontally. Since the map region starts at the x-axis of 0 and width is 960, to get right after that will be 960 in the x coordinate. It's going to be positioned at the very top of the screen, so the y-axis is going to start at 0. The width is going to be 320, the rest of the x. So 960 plus 320 gives us the full 1280. And then 690. We want to keep it the same height as the map region. It wants a graphics device reference, so we'll get that from the screen system. Now we just pass in the session reference. So that was setting up the user interface, and it takes the 3 regions to set up and a session. Now each of these regions has its own reference to the session. Okay. Audio Manager. Audio Manager should exist. We should have that set up in the actual game class, the Tower Defense game class. And that will be the last tutorial, because I will give you the audio files and everything else, and I will add those into the solution just like you, since I don't have the audio files. If you saw the last video, you know why I do not keep the audio files linked. So I will re-add that in the last tutorial, and then we will be able to test everything. So, Audio Manager should be ready to go. So, audiomanager.singleton.play song. Now, what do we song? What song do we play? Map.song queue name. We get this information from the map. Input map.new action. This is where we can actually pause our game. So the only action we will have is pause. And it's going to be Microsoft.xna.framework.input.keys.escape. Okay, so after this method, let's public override the load content. Now, this is a direct derivative of game screen, so we do not need to have base.loadContent. Let's set up the UI.font is equal to screen system.content.load bracket sprite font bracket opening parentheses quote font / play font. Okay, so we're loading in the font and setting that up in the user interface, and that's what font it will use. Okay, now next up is the draw screen method. So let's go ahead and delete the throw new not implemented exception. And to draw the screen, let's just get our sprite batch. Sprite batch is equal to screen system.sprite batch. And we're just going to UI.draw UI. We need to pass it in the game time and then the sprite batch. So, like I said, the engine itself will take care of 90% of our work. So we're drawing the user interface that will draw all the monsters, all of our buttons, everything. So that's all we need for the draw screen. Last up is the update screen. So delete the throw new not implemented exception. If session.isPaused. If we have paused, if the session is paused, freeze the screen. Screen system.add screen. New pause screen. So we need to pause the game. We need to display the pause screen. We pass it this and our session object. Now, if our input map action pause was pressed, so if input map dot action new action press pause. So if we have pressed our pause button, we're going to pause our session. At the very end, we'll call session.update. We need to give it game time. Okay, so this current loop, if we've pressed our escape key, it's going to pause our game by pausing the session. The next game loop is going to check to see if session is paused. Since it is, it will freeze the screen and it will show the pause screen. And then when we exit that screen, this is what we did last tutorial. Or 2 tutorials ago. I apologize. When we exit that screen, it's going to reactivate the screen before, which is what we're saying is this. So it's going to reactivate our play screen, and it's going to resume the session. Alright, let's go ahead and save this, and that is it for this tutorial. I cannot demonstrate the end result because we need to wait for all of our content to be made. So next tutorial, I'll discuss a brief overview on how to create the XML files. And then the tutorial after that will be the very last one. It might be long, it might be short, depending on if we have any bugs to deal with. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And like I said, as you see here, this is a very pretty simple class. The engine itself is doing most of the work. So I hope to see you next time.